Hi, everyone. Welcome to another episode of By Accident or Design, a snackable live stream series that celebrates honest moments in business, marketing, and design, from mistakes and wins and all of the whoa moments in between. And today we have Parry Malm. Parry is a well known digital marketing dude. He's worked with countless brands and media outlets to help them optimize their online results and is one of the leading experts on email marketing. He is also the CEO of Phrasey, a company that delivers natural language generation using AI for on-brand content. Hey, Parry, how are you?
Yeah, real good, thanks.
Awesome. We're super excited to speak to you for a few minutes, and thank you for joining us. So let's just hop right in. I'd love to hear a little bit about your journey that led you to where you are now as the CEO of Phrasey.
Sure, yeah. Well, I don't know who's watching this, so I'm just going to speak generally, but probably everybody's heard about generative AI in the last couple of months. But before that, had never heard of it. Well, look, we're the OGs of generative AI, where I had the concept to build a technology that would help people generate content for online marketing in 2014. And we've been building it since. So what Phrasey effectively does is it generates language and then optimizes it using a whole bunch of fancy stats and stuff to make sure that people get better results from their online marketing campaigns. But the reason why I started Phrasey is because my career started as a brand side marketer, and I'd sit there sending like millions of messages to millions of people. And I used to sit there and think like, what if the message sucks? And I looked around the market. There's a load of technology um, to help people fix the operational concerns of marketing, but nothing that applied the same level of scientific rigor to the message that we were applying everywhere else in the marketing mix. So I thought, wow, you know what? Let's build it. Fast forward to where we are now, and we have work with some of the biggest brands on the planet in both Europe and the U.S. And we're changing the world one word at a time.
Is that your all's tagline?
I'm on the 18th floor of a building currently, and I might just jump out if I say it again.
Oh, well, it's so funny. So I'm the social media strategist here at Visme, and I made a funny meme for Instagram yesterday, and the caption was, at least this guy isn't talking about AI. And here I am 12 hours later, we're chatting about AI. So, marketing,
Yeah, well,
we can't
look,
take ourselves too seriously.
it's super gnarly where like in the last like 6 months, all of the Bitcoin bros who had become Web3 bros are now like AI bros. And I just watch it with absolute glee. It's like a gold rush again. And like in every gold rush in human history, it's not the people who strike gold who make money. It's the people who are selling gold pens and pickaxes. And that's what you're seeing with, like, you can't go on LinkedIn or Twitter or something without seeing someone post something stupid like um, oh, like you've probably played with Chat GPT, but 98% of you are using it wrong. Here's 7 tips in a
Mhm.
carousel on LinkedIn that are generated to give me the dopamine hits when you like my posts, kind of thing, right? And it's bullshit. Like it's absolute bullshit, right? Like people have got it completely wrong. And there's so much noise in the marketplace right now. There's a huge amount of confusion. And that presents a real problem for marketers throughout the world, because how are you supposed to know who to believe, who's actually legit in this space? Now at Phrasey, we've been building this stuff since 2014. We registered as a company in 2015. So we're the sort of OGs of this space. And I just sort of sit back and I watch all the hype and all the hoopla going on, and I'm just like, there's going to be a lot of people buying pickaxes in the next 12 months who are going to wind up with nothing. And I'm just going to watch the world burn for a while.
That's a really great point about making sure you're not only cutting through the noise, but that you as a brand are a trustworthy source for people who are looking for the answers and looking for solutions. So I think that's a really good point. And specifically, speaking on Phrasey and Visme alike, I think that staying on brand is probably one of the key elements to success. And so I'd love to just chat for a second about branding and the importance of it. And what do you see as the biggest obstacle that a company faces when developing what their brand is going to be And aside from Visme or Phrasey, what tools or insights should they be focusing on to overcome and really align themselves with their brand guidelines?
Yeah. Well, here's the crazy thing. Most brand guidelines aren't very useful. Usually you pay like $100,000 to a big agency to make them for you, and you'll get like a 200-page document with all sorts of rules about this and that and the other. And people read them once, and then they use them as a persuasion tool to confirm what they believe is right, rather than a codified rule set that one needs to follow to adhere to the brand constructs. And this is because, if you're given like this huge voluminous brand guidelines document, you read through it and you're like, okay, like we're supposed to use words that evoke these feelings. Well, to me, these words evoke these feelings. Therefore, they're on brand, and you use them as this persuasive tool, like a lawyer would use precedent. It's not inherently binding, but you can use it to help argue a case, and you can convince yourself of absolutely anything. But then, if you have a different person read the exact same thing, never ceases to amaze me how two people can experience the exact same thing and perceive it completely differently.
Mhm.
So actually, it doesn't give you a huge amount of cohesion. What it does is it creates political quarters. It creates arguments of persuasion, and usually defers to the highest paid person's opinion on stuff. So it's not a terribly efficient process. Where things need to move towards, and this is exactly what Frazee builds. So I'm biased in saying this, but like, just because I'm biased doesn't mean I'm wrong, right? Is you can actually take those brand guidelines and you can codify them and you can turn them into a specific rule set, which inexorably needs to be followed every time. So it's not a question of persuasion. It's not a question of interpretation of the rules. It's basically saying this is the rule set. Therefore, Mr. AI, you need to generate language within this defined set of constraints. And you are inherently and technically incapable of violating these brand guidelines. It's a much more efficient path. And this is what the future is.
That's interesting. So I'm going to kind of skip around. I have a few questions, kind of leading on to what you just said. As far as a marketing team, I mean, humans aren't perfect. Machine learning has the ability to be closer to perfection. Not saying that marketing and the fluidity of communication should always strive for these constraints and rules. But in your wildest dreams, what do you see a marketing team looking like in 5 years with the introduction of all of this AI technology?
Well, I've learned a long time ago to never try to predict the future. I mean, I spent like what, 8.5, 9 years building a company and technology that my mom didn't understand. And then OpenAI come out with like a little web app. My mom goes, "Oh, so are you kind of like them?" I'm like, fuck, like all these years. God damn it. So look, I've certainly learned throughout the years, like to predict way in the future is a fool's errand. But here's what I do think, right? Right now, marketing and ultimately humanity has an existential concern with the overabundance of content that is not necessarily valuable, content that is not regurgitated, or content that is effectively regurgitated, and content that is not validated. I mean, now, so back in the day, the real crux of the problem is, do you remember looking at a Word document and you needed to write something for something, and you'd see that sort of that flashing cursor, and you just go like, what am I going to write? And you had that writer's block, and it was super stressful.
Well, that's
That
why
problem.
Clippy was invented. Don't forget about Clippy.
Yeah, but that problem, that blank page problem, no longer exists. The
Mhm.
cognitive burden of creation is no longer a burden. You can go into a number of different technologies and click a button and generate language. So that's cool. You've got a million monkeys on a million typewriters, and eventually they might write the complete works of Charles Dickens. But who's going to know if they do or not? That's the human's job. And the human's job now, the cognitive burden is shifted from that of creation to that of curation. And our job is to run through voluminous amounts of content generated by people, generated by a machine. It doesn't matter, but huge amounts of content, and then determine what's good and what's bad. And that is an equally taxing cognitive burden, but one that we haven't trained ourselves for very effectively. And this is going to be the real problem. In the future, marketers are going to be curators, not creators. And we need to accept this. Now, with that being said, I'm going to completely dichotomize what I just said, because what we're also going to find in about 12 months' time, I figure, I just said I wasn't going to make predictions, and here I am doing the complete opposite. I am an enigma wrapped in I don't even know what. But here's what's going to happen. Everybody is running towards creating content with AI currently, and there's going to be a huge amount of content created, and we're going to find there's going to be this nostalgic throwback to human generated content. And in about a year's time, people are going to start going, this content was created by a human, and they'll use that as a differentiator. And we're going to find a reversion back to the way things were, be it through nostalgia, differentiation, doesn't matter what. So we're going to find that there will be two tracks, each of which are equally beneficial, but for different purposes. That was a long
Wow.
ramble.
I never thought about having that tapping into that emotion of nostalgia from just human generated content. Like, I guess I've never thought about it that way. That's equal
Well,
part thrilling and scary.
so like I mean, if you think about it in terms of the like a great allegory is the beer market, where despite all the news recently, one of the most drunk beers in the US is Bud Light. And look, I actually quite like Bud Light, Miller Lite, Coors Light. I think it's a light beer. You can drink a bunch of them. It's thirst quenching, but that's by the by. My bad taste is not the topic right now, right? But then like 10 or 15 years ago, there's this whole trend of microbreweries, and through every city across the US, UK, wherever, you had all these little like post-industrial microbreweries sprout up in little warehouses, and the guys would have mustaches with the curls there, and they would make super hoppy beer, which actually was not very good, but it was trendy. And they would have menus written on chalkboards with little witticisms. They would think of little ironic names for the beers, little plays on words and whatnot. And it was super cool and edgy. It was very it was very sort of human driven, because it was this reversion from having this huge sort of homogenous creation of Bud Light that overcame the market. So then humans went back to be creative, and that's going to happen again. Now, of course, as the story goes, all the craft beers have now been bought up by Molson Coors and Anheuser-Busch and stuff, and they're all kind of now mass-produced microbrews and whatnot. But let's just live in this little moment where we can go and have a mustachioed fella wearing suspenders and a tweed jacket serve us a half pint.
Yeah. That's so true. And you're right. Even all of those small, unique, differentiators that, appeal to a market such as these microbreweries, eventually they all kind of blend into the wider industry as a whole. So it'll be interesting to see how, with creatives and designers and copywriters and social media marketers, where we will land within the industry as a whole. As I mean, in the last 6 months, AI itself has taken over the whole industry. So it's a very unique perspective. Yeah, that just really caught me. So I want to kind of pivot just a little bit here. Of course, AI is super important, and I do see personally, I see the reason to use AI when it comes to your branding, your copywriting, making sure things fall under these constraints. But the human touch is still very important. I would just love for you to speak a little bit about why it's so important for a brand's voice and their messaging and their tone, along with design, to not get lost within AI, because a robot, it can create your messaging, but can it create your tone?
Well, I think let's speak again in 2 years' time and figure out what the actual deal is. I think humans overestimate and underestimate both their own creativity and the machine's creativity.
Mm.
Where humans in general, we think that we're creative beings, but actually we're not as creative as we actually think we are. And like that's why maybe the first person who started a microbrewery was super creative. But then when somebody in Spokane, Washington said, "Oh, look, there's a disused warehouse. I'm going to do something super creative. I'm going to start a microbrewery." And that happened in like every city across this great nation. It's not
Yeah.
actually that creative, right? So by virtue of trying to be creative, we became homogenized to a large extent. But with that being said, every once in a while, something interesting does happen. And that's why, I mean, you have humans creating art, and sometimes you see a piece of art and you just look at it and you go, that really speaks. For me, it's Pete Mondrian, where he's like a neo-modern Dutch artist from the 1950s type thing, and he would just create stuff, and I just look at it and it speaks to me. And maybe it doesn't speak to all people, but it speaks to me, right? Whereas with machines, when you first log in to a large language model and you give it a prompt and it brings back coherent text, you look at it and you go, wow, that's incredible. And by virtue of it being coherent, you assume that it's good. And this is where we overestimate the impact of AI, because just because it's coherent doesn't mean it's good. Anybody can write a coherent sentence, any machine can write a coherent sentence, but does it actually achieve the ends which you want, or is it just coherent? And because you see it being written in front of you by this magical box, you assume it's good. So this is where the real differentiation is going to happen, whether it's about brand or about performance. I mean, I'm not smart enough to really know the difference, because you can't have one without the second one working also. There's no point to have a great brand if nobody knows about it. There's no point to spend all your money on ads if nobody knows your brand. Um, so the real challenge, right, is going to be to cut through the clutter and realize that just because it's coherent, it doesn't make it good. To understand what drives goodness in content, be it brand virtues, be it performance metrics, whatever works for your specific context, and then using the AI alongside your own nous to drive towards a creative end that will be greater than any one of them doing it on their own.
Yeah, and at the end of the day, the biggest thing anyone's looking for is conversions, right? So what is the means to an end to get there? The ultimate goal is a conversion, is a lead, a sign up, a sale, a download. So whatever is the best and most efficient method to get there, I think is just going to be the leader, and it is what it is.
Yeah, totally. And look, I mean, it's very possible that you can use AI to just kind of straight through top to bottom marketing campaigns. I think there would be a lot of risk in that. Um, by virtue of, how do you know it's good? How do you verify it's good? Maybe you can get it done quickly, but there's that old thing going, you can do something fast or you can do it well, and it's hard to do them both at the same time.
Yeah.
I personally think, and here's my big quote. You're ready for it? Do you have a seatbelt?
I'm ready.
Right? The future is not AI. The future is humans using AI. And the sooner we can actually accept this, the sooner we can move forward. People are overestimating. We're deep in the midst of the hype cycle, and people have these inflated expectations. AI is extremely powerful, and it is going to revolutionize a lot of areas, but that's not to the detriment, and it will not diminish the human experience unless we let it.
That, I'm thinking quotable captions here for these social posts as a social media manager. That's a really important point. And I think that also salves a lot of people's concerns about where, the space for marketers is it's not AI doing the job for you. It's how you as a marketer can apply AI to your work to make it better ultimately. So that's a really important point. I like that a lot. So beyond AI, I'd like to get a couple personal questions in here. This is a very short show. We're running about 15, 20 minutes as it is. So, as design is very important to us, I would love to know, what place, object, or element of design has been the most memorable to you. I'll give you a quick example of mine. The Philadelphia murals around, it doesn't have to be an ad, but for me, the Philadelphia murals around the city, every corner you pass is something that tells a story, and it tells it in a different, unique way, in color and texture. So that piece of design always speaks to me. So I'd love to know yours.
Oh man, uh, that's a hard question. I'm not a super aesthetic person. I don't really notice much stuff. I mean, I guess if I think back, like I'm not very brand loyal. Like I'm just a very annoying consumer, where I just like, I
Oh
don't
no.
have a long enough memory to be allegiant to a brand, and I don't like, I'll buy the pair of shoes that is the most comfy, and I don't even notice if it's a Nike or an Adidas, or like, it's just sort of how my brain works. Um, except for one brand of underwear and socks. And it's the eponymous brand of Bjorn Borg, the tennis player. And they
No
are
way.
like first of all, they're super comfy, and like I'm not going to go into the details of the comfort, but this is like the best underwear ever created by humankind. But the designs are like super wild and super funky, and it's like this little secret that I carry with me that nobody sees except for me. But it's like super bright colors, super loud. They did this gnarly campaign where they smuggled in a whole bunch of their brightly colored underwear into North Korea and just randomly deposited them. And so now, amidst the beigeness of a corrupt kleptocracy, there are individual North Koreans with super bright underwear on, and nobody knows except for Bjorn Borg and them. And I just think that's super dope.
That's a fantastic campaign. I haven't heard of that one. We're big tennis buffs in this house. So the fact that you just said Bjorn Borg is like, that's really amazing. And I have to look up this campaign. I wasn't aware of that type of guerrilla marketing, but A1 for them. That's incredible. So Parry, where, what do you have coming up? Where can people find you? You have the floor, plug yourself. Floor is yours.
Yeah, so look, I mean, it's Phrasee, that's PHRASEE.co. We are on the internet, so you may find us there. We are also in our offices in Chicago and London. You may find us there. And I am called Parry, and I am found on the internet as well.
Perfect.
You put me on the spot there. I didn't plan a shameless plug, so.
It's all right. Chef's kiss. Everyone has the Google machine, so it's perfect. All right, Parry. Well, thanks everyone for joining us. This live stream will be available on replay on demand. Check it out on our YouTube as well later today. And thanks for joining us.